Antibiotics are metabolites or artificially synthesized analogues of microorganisms whose main purpose is to inhibit the growth of other types of microorganisms or kill them. In definition, there are broad concepts, including antibacterial antibiotics, antifungal antibiotics, and antibiotics against other small pathogens. But in clinical practice, antibiotics often refer to antibacterial antibiotics. In 1928, British bacteriologist Fleming discovered that there was no bacterial growth around the colony of penicillin that accidentally landed on the culture medium from the air. He believed that penicillin produced a certain chemical substance that secreted into the culture medium to inhibit bacterial growth. This chemical substance is the first antibiotic discovered, penicillin. Afterwards, various types of antibiotics were discovered and applied in clinical settings, saving many lives. The discovery and application of antibiotics is one of the greatest achievements in the history of science and technology in the 20th century. Due to the application of antibiotics, millions of bacterial infections have been saved, giving humans a major weapon to fight against disease. Until now, antibiotics remain irreplaceable anti-infective drug. Human lifespan has increased by nearly 20 years compared to the beginning of the last century, with about 10 years benefiting from the widespread use of antibiotics. However, antibiotics are a double-edged sword, and the misuse of antibiotics can have a significant negative impact on human health. First, allergic reactions. Some people may express allergic reactions after using antibiotics, such as chest tightness, dizziness, difficulty breathing, and so on. In severe cases, it can even cause death. 2. Developing drug resistance. Long-term abuse of antibiotics can lead to bacterial resistance, resulting in a significant decrease in the effectiveness or loss of effectiveness of antibiotics. According to the World Health Organization's prediction, antibiotic resistance may lead to 10 million deaths per year by 2050, more than the number of deaths caused by cancer. We should follow the doctor's advice when using antibiotics. Only after being diagnosed with a bacterial infection can we take the appropriate dosage and course of antibiotics under the guidance of a doctor.
According to Nail, 2016, antibiotics enter the environment mainly via 3 routes: waste from animals, humans, and production processes. This substance can pollute lungs, plants, and water, promoting resistance to medication in harmful microbes they encounter. It's difficult to predict how quickly they degrade, as they are very diverse chemically, an area where gaps in our understanding need to be addressed to help us identify the antibiotics of greatest risk in the environment context. Research shows that 75% to 90% of antibiotics given to animals aren't broken down by their bodies and end up in sewage and waterways. It's very important to address the roots of the problem, as this often comes from antibiotic abuse. Additionally, we need to think about ways to reduce the sales and use in farming of byproducts like manure from animals treated with antibiotics. Besides most antibiotics being excreted by humans without being metabolized, improper disposal, like flushing them down the toilet, is also a problem, especially in the US. In hospitals, patient waste contains high level of antibiotics. Studies found high antibiotics concentration in hospital sewage in countries like Germany and India. Active pharmaceutical ingredients are the biologically active ingredients in a pharmaceutical drug. In the case of antimicrobials, most are produced in developing countries, while local companies can produce these raw ingredients to global standard at substantially lower cost than in Europe or other high-income areas. These API are then sold in bulk to pharmaceutical companies, who makes end products for patients globally. However, there is growing evidence that some API manufacturers do not adequately treat waste products, with the results that antibiotics API are released into the local environment, usually as wastewater. This acts as a driver for the development of drug resistance, creating environmental reservoir of antibiotic-resistant bacteria.
In terms of environmental impacts, apart from the fact that antibiotics have strengthened human beings and made them the most powerful viruses harming the Earth's environment. One of the main impacts is the possibility of strengthening drug resistance in human beings. Another concern is the potential effect of antibiotics on the function and services of ecosystems. According to Larsson, 2014, microorganisms in farmland soil are crucial, for example, nitrogen fixation and other nutrient fluxes, and there is a potential for antibiotics to disrupt such processes. To date, however, there's no clear evidence for disturbed ecosystem services in soil communities due to antibiotic exposure, given the prevailing exposure levels documented in the field. Similarly, wastewater treatment of both household and industrial discharges depends on the functionality of complex microbial ecosystems within the treatment plants, ecosystems that could be disturbed by antibiotic exposure. A crucial point is, of course, the exposure level required to affect the function of the microbial ecosystems. Again, to date, concentrations of antibiotics found in municipal sewage treatment plants do not appear to be sufficient to reduce their treatment efficiency. However, for treatment plants receiving highly contaminated waste from manufacturing of antibiotics, the exposure levels and thus the risk for disturbed function can be quite different. Many microbial ecosystems tend to show a large degree of resilience, possibly governed by their ability for horizontal gene transfer and ability to rapidly accumulate mutations. Thus, given sufficiently long exposure times, in environments exposed to very high antibiotic exposures appear to harbor a rather diverse bacterial flora.
Although we are facing these problems, we are delighted to say that Yan and his team have come up with effective suggestions. One suggestion is to set minimum standards for manufacturing packaging containing APIs, and the other is to encourage pharmaceutical companies to adopt higher standards throughout their supply chains. Improvements made by the companies themselves, like better production process and setting up wastewater treatment plants on site, can help tackle these issues. On the non-technical side, we would like to see a policy to penalize the misuse of antibiotics in agricultural production, and heavier taxes or fines should be considered as a part of the policy. For cases such as hospitals, where the discharge of effluent may contain high concentrations of antibiotics, or specialized water purification equipment will need to be installed. If not, then again, policies are needed to restrict this behavior. Finally, Anderson mentioned in her speech that to describe the Anthropocene, we need both human and non-human stories. Studies of the Anthropocene have suffered from the great gap between the nature science and the humanities, which continue to segregate studies of non-humans from studies of humans. It is completely ridiculous to imagine advocacy knowledge without contributions from each side. In the late 20th century, solutions such as treating humanism as primitive science or treating science as bad philosophy only made the gap wider. So, as a final example, we would like to try to discuss whether there is anything that human can learn from nature about the use of antibiotics. According to Clardy, the relationship between fungus-growing ants and their dietary fungi first began 50 million years ago in the Amazon basin, and over 10 million years of evolution, ants have become inextricably linked to fungi. Ants have developed a particularly attractive symbiotic system with edible fungi and the actinomycetes carried on the fungi, a strain used clinically in the production of antibiotics and anti-cancer agents. Studies have shown that ants have evolved for healthier bacteria.
Different ants generally exhibit a variety of modifications, with structures that house bacteria connect to glands. These glands are believed to produce nutrients, fostering the bacteria growth. The antibiotics produced by these bacteria can inhibit certain infections found in nature, thereby providing enhanced protection against food fungi for the ants. This scenario prompts contemplation on the social behavior of ants, particularly their swarming nature and intricate social organization. It raises questions about the role of this evolutionary and symbiotic process, which remain particularly unexplored. Concurrently, this situation prompts reflection on human antibiotic usage and its contribution to increasing resistance. It leads to pondering whether humans can learn from this nature symbiotic system to develop more sustainable practice, reduce our environmental impact,